30 days ago, this soil had no smell, no worms, and killed every plant I put in it. Today, I pulled a double handful out of the same corner, and there were 6 earthworms in it before I'd even finished sifting through the pile. Nothing about that happens by accident, and nothing about it happened overnight. It happened because of a specific, repeatable process, and today I'm showing you exactly what that process was, day by day. At the end of the last video, I had a result I genuinely wasn't expecting. A single application of compost and worm castings mixed into the soil that had killed 3 tomato plants the year before was enough to move that soil from dead last to a respectable 3rd place in a 5-pot growing test, ahead of a bag of store-bought potting mix. That result raised an obvious next question. If one application did that much, what happens if I don't stop at one? What does it actually take in real time to bring dead soil all the way back? So for the past 30 days, I've been running a second experiment on that exact same corner of my backyard, not growing a plant in it this time, but focused entirely on rebuilding the soil itself and tracking every single change along the way using the same tools from video 1, my own senses, a jar, and water. I fed that soil on a schedule. I watched it. I tested it every 10 days using the jar test, so I'd have hard visual evidence of what was changing underneath the surface, not just a feeling that things seemed better. And I want to walk you through the entire 30 days, because the story isn't really about the final result. It's about what happens in between, the actual mechanics of a dead patch of ground turning back into a living one.
Chapter 1. The Feeding Plan. Before day 1, I had to decide what I was actually going to put back into this soil, and I kept it deliberately simple because I wanted this to be something any gardener watching could realistically copy without buying anything exotic or expensive. The plan had 3 parts. First, a 2-inch layer of finished compost worked into the top few inches of soil on day 1, along with a generous handful of worm castings mixed in directly, the same combination that produced the result in the last video, just applied more thoroughly across the entire test area instead of a single pot. Second, a thin layer of mulch on top of that, shredded leaves I'd been collecting from around the yard, nothing purchased. Mulch doesn't feed soil directly the way compost does, but it does something almost as important. It keeps the surface from drying out and baking in the sun, which matters enormously for anything biological trying to survive underneath it. Bacteria and fungi don't do well in soil that swings between soaking wet and bone dry. Mulch smooths that swing out. And third, consistent watering. Not heavy, not daily, but reliable, roughly twice a week, enough to keep the whole system slightly moist without ever letting it pool or flood. Biological activity needs water to move and function. Without it, even the best compost just sits there, inert, waiting. And that was the entire plan. No fertilizer, no soil conditioner, no specialty product with a name I couldn't pronounce. Compost, worm castings, mulch, and water on a schedule for 30 days. If this worked, I wanted the reason it worked to be something anyone could replicate in their own backyard this weekend. One thing I deliberately did not do was till or dig this soil deeply before starting. I worked the compost and castings into the top few inches only, by hand, and left everything below that undisturbed. Heavy tilling breaks apart the very fungal networks and soil structure this whole process depends on rebuilding. It's a bit like trying to grow a forest by bulldozing the ground flat first. If there was any biology left clinging on in that soil at all, even in trace amounts, I wanted to give it the best possible chance to reconnect and spread, not destroy it a second time before the experiment even began.
Chapter 2. Days 1 through 10. The First Signs. For the first several days, honestly, nothing visible happened, and I want to be upfront about that instead of skipping past it, because if you try this yourself, this is the part where it's easiest to assume it isn't working. By day 4, the only real change was the smell. That sharp, faint sourness that had been sitting under the soil since video 1 was gone, replaced by something closer to neutral. Not yet the rich forest floor smell of the compost-fed section, but no longer actively unpleasant either. By day 7, I noticed the first physical change I could actually point to. When I squeezed a handful, it held together for a moment before crumbling instead of collapsing instantly into dust the way it had a week earlier. That's a small thing to look for, but it's a meaningful one. It means something in that soil had started binding particles together again, which almost always means biological activity, specifically fungal threads and microbial byproducts doing the binding. Day 10 brought the first jar test of the experiment, run exactly the same way as the last 2 videos: soil, water, a hard shake, 24 hours of settling. Compared to the very first jar test from video 1, there was a visible difference, a thin, faint organic band starting to form near the top of the water, nowhere near as thick as the compost-fed sample's band, but present where 10 days earlier there had been nothing at all. 10 days of consistent, boring maintenance, and the soil had gone from biologically silent to showing the first measurable signs of life. Nothing dramatic yet, but nothing dramatic is usually how real change in a living system actually starts. I also want to flag something that surprised me during this window because it's easy to overlook. I checked the soil temperature under the mulch layer against a bare, unmulched patch a few feet away on a warm afternoon, and the mulched section was noticeably cooler and more even. Most soil biology, especially bacteria, has a fairly narrow comfort zone. Extreme heat at the surface can stall or even kill off the exact organisms you're trying to encourage back in. That 2-inch layer of shredded leaves wasn't just holding moisture, it was quietly protecting the whole recovery process from the sun undoing it in the middle of the day. I'll be honest that days 1 through 6 were the hardest part of this entire experiment, purely psychologically. There's a real temptation, watching a patch of dirt that looks exactly the same as it did a week ago, to assume you did something wrong or that this particular soil is simply beyond fixing. If you try this yourself, expect that stretch and don't let it talk you out of finishing. Chapter 3, Days 11 through 20. The worms return. This was the stretch where the experiment stopped feeling theoretical and started feeling real, because this is when the earthworms showed up. I hadn't added any worms myself deliberately, because I wanted to see whether the environment alone would draw them in from the surrounding yard, the way it would for any gardener not planning to buy a container of worms just to fix one corner of ground. On day 13, I found my first one, a single small earthworm a few inches down in soil that had shown 0 worm activity across every single test in video 1. By day 18, that number was up to 4 in a single handful. Earthworms don't move into soil at random. They move toward moisture, organic matter, and a food source, and their presence is one of the most reliable visual signs available to any gardener that a patch of ground has crossed back over into being biologically active. A dead soil doesn't attract worms. A recovering one does, almost like clockwork once there's actually something there for them to eat and somewhere stable enough for them to live. The texture kept shifting through this window too. By day 20, squeezing a handful produced something closer to the loose, crumbly clumping I'd seen in the compost-fed soil back in video 1. Not identical, not yet as dark, but structurally moving in exactly that direction. And the smell had gone from neutral to genuinely earthy, the specific smell most gardeners associate with healthy ground, without necessarily knowing why it happens. It's largely a compound produced by a specific group of soil bacteria as they break down organic matter, and its presence is basically a biological signature you can smell before you can measure it any other way. The second jar test, run again on day 20, showed the organic band roughly doubled compared to day 10. The trend wasn't just continuing, it was accelerating, which made sense once the worms arrived. They don't just indicate biological activity, they actively drive more of it, tunneling channels for air and water, and processing organic matter into a form other organisms can use even faster. There's a compounding pattern hiding in that acceleration that I think is worth naming directly because it's the actual mechanism behind why this process speeds up instead of moving at a flat, constant rate. Worms attract more worms since a food source and stable moisture draw them in from the surrounding soil. Their tunnels create more air and water pathways, which support more bacteria and fungi. That larger biological population processes organic matter faster, which produces more food for the worms. Each part of the system feeds the next part. It's the same reason the last 10 days of any composting process always seem to move faster than the first 10 days. You're not doing more work. The system is simply doing more of the work for you as it comes back online.
Chapter 4, Days 21 through 30. Closing the gap. The final 10 days were less about dramatic new developments and more about watching a trend continue to hold, which in its own way was the most convincing part of the entire test. A single good result can be luck. A trend that holds steady across 3 separate measurement windows is much harder to write off as coincidence. By day 25, the worm count in a single test handful was up to 7, and I found something I genuinely hadn't expected to see this quickly. A small thread-like white structure running just beneath the mulch layer, which I'm fairly confident was an early fungal network, the same kind of structure discussed back in video 1 as central to how healthy soil actually feeds a plant. I want to be careful here and not overstate this. I didn't run a lab test to confirm exactly what species it was, and I'd encourage you to treat this as a promising visual sign rather than hard proof. But its presence at all, in soil that had none a month ago, fits the overall pattern building across every other test. The final jar test on day 30 showed an organic band clearly thicker than day 20's, and for the first time across the entire experiment, water absorbed into the surface at a rate that was actually comparable to the raised bed soil from video 1, a soil that 1 month ago, this exact patch of ground had nothing in common with at all. To be fully transparent about where this landed, 30 days of consistent feeding did not turn this soil into the compost-fed section from video 1. That section has a full year of investment behind it, and 30 days isn't going to close that entire gap, no matter how well the process works. What 30 days did produce was a soil that now sits somewhere between the old raised bed sample and the compost-fed sample. A soil that went from actively hostile to genuinely functional in a single month, using nothing but compost, worm castings, mulch, and consistent water.
Chapter 5. What this actually cost. I want to close this experiment by being completely honest with the cost, because I think that honesty is more useful to you than any of the biology I've already covered. The compost was homemade, built from kitchen scraps and yard waste I already had, so effectively free beyond the time it took to maintain the pile over the preceding months. The worm castings were a small bag I already owned from an earlier project, worth maybe a few dollars if I'd had to buy them fresh. The mulch was shredded leaves raked from my own yard. The water came from my own tap, at a volume small enough to not move the needle on a monthly bill. In terms of active time, I'm talking about roughly 15 minutes on day 1 to apply the compost, castings, and mulch, and then 2 or 3 minutes twice a week to water. Across 30 days, that's well under 2 hours of total hands-on effort to take a piece of ground from biologically dead to functionally alive. That's the number I want to leave you with because it directly contradicts the assumption most of us carry into gardening without ever questioning it, that fixing bad soil is expensive, slow, and probably not worth the trouble compared to just buying a few bags of replacement dirt. It isn't. It's cheap, It's slow in the sense that biology takes real time to build, and it is absolutely worth the trouble, because unlike a bag of replacement soil, a rebuilt biological system keeps working and keeps improving every season after this one without you having to buy it again. Compare that to the alternative most of us default to instead. Bagged garden soil bought fresh every spring for a struggling bed adds up year after year, and it never actually solves the underlying problem. It just covers it for one season before the same patch of ground quietly reverts back to whatever it was before, because nothing about pouring in fresh dirt addresses why the old soil went biologically empty in the first place. 30 days of feeding does something a bag of replacement soil never can. It fixes the actual mechanism, not just the symptom sitting on top of it.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification button so you don't miss any of our videos in this series. 30 days, under 2 hours of hands-on work, no products with unpronounceable names, and a corner of my yard that went from killing everything I planted in it to showing worms, structure, smell, and a measurable organic layer in the jar test, all because of the same 3 things applied consistently: compost, worm castings, and mulch on top of soil I never once replaced. If you've got a patch of ground in your own garden that's been quietly failing you the way this one failed me, this is your actual blueprint. You don't need to buy your way out of it. You need to feed it, protect its moisture with mulch, water it consistently, and give it close to a month before you judge the result. In the next investigation, I want to go one step further and test something a lot of gardeners assume matters just as much as compost: whether the specific ratio of materials in that compost, what actually goes into the pile in the first place, changes how fast and how completely a soil like this one recovers. Not all compost is equal, and I want to find out exactly how much that difference matters. If you want the exact feeding schedule from this video, the day-by-day breakdown, quantities, and timing, it's laid out in full in the Soil Intelligence Handbook, linked in the description below. I wish you a happy gardening. See you in the next video.